Hello, welcome to this week's episode of The VUU. Now, life happens, and sometimes when life happens, even last minute, we make decisions and are flexible in order to accommodate things happening. So, Reverend Dave Petit, who passed away last year, his memorial is this morning or this afternoon, East Coast time, and it's really important that Reverend Meg Riley, who offered to still be here today, and I said, no, you have been Dave's colleague for many, many years. Please go to the memorial. So we will reschedule Meg for December, for a Thursday in December. In the meantime, Dawn and I are here to say a quick hello to you all. I had toyed with the idea, Dawn, of inviting people to ask us questions, but I'm not sure if anyone is moved to do that. I don't know, but how are you doing today?
Oh my God, that actually sounds kind of fun. I'm totally up for it if you are. Yeah, I'm doing all right down here in New Jersey. It's Veterans Day, so I'm thinking about my folks. I've got a handful of folks in my congregation who are veterans. And it's a bright, sunshiny day. It's not bad.
I think, here it's Seattle. It's
it's kind of rainy and cloudy and shitty.
Yeah, some days it's bright and sunny, but it's cloudy today. It's rainy. It doesn't bother me, and I don't have seasonal affective disorder, so I don't quite get as I also didn't live here my whole life, so who knows if it would be different. But I do want to touch on Veterans Day for a minute, because I think one of the things that I've noticed in our communities is I know I feel this tension. I mean, here's the thing. The military-industrial complex is terrible. It just is, because it exists for war and it exists for destruction. And yet, the oppressive system in which we exist sometimes gives folks who join the military very little or no other option in order to have an existence that includes food and shelter and healthcare and paying for school. So those realities are true, and we have many people who are Unitarian Universalists who serve. We have military chaplains that the CLF sponsors that we are very proud of, to offer a place for folks who are in the military. And to say, you are loved and you are held. So there is a both and a complexity of, we have folks who are police officers and law enforcement who are I was about to say religious educators. That's not, who are Unitarian Universalists. And the complexity is, we how do we live out Unitarian Universalism even within systems that are deeply, deeply harmful? So that's food for thought.
Yeah, there's a part of me that you're right. There is a lot of tension there, and there's a part of me that sort of feels protective of our UU kin who are in those systems, and then again, there's a part of me that says, "Thank God they're there," because without them, I'd rather have those folks where they are than have nobody there with an understanding of our values and, with some understanding of the importance of anti-racism work and some understanding of the importance of systemic oppression and all of that. Like that's one of the real big problems with an entire volunteer military is that you only get people who want to go in, and people who want to go in for a variety of different reasons. Too many are coerced by economic situations. But I'd rather know that there's somebody in that system who, as a Unitarian Universalist, is inclined to be the one to speak out and say, whoa, can we think about this for a second?
Well, and you are loved. I mean, I think one of the things that comes up for me is folks who are part of the LGBTQIA community, who are part of these systems that remain primarily homophobic and transphobic. And So to have places where there is some affirmation of
Right.
being affirmed as whole and holy and sacred, I agree with
Hmm.
you. At least there's somebody saying, countering the more conservative and more binary thinking ideas of chaplains who maybe of other faiths who are saying, "Oh no, this is how you're supposed to be, or else somehow you're going to be unloved by a deity." I mean,
Right.
so I think that's where we really just, it is powerful to be told. I remember I was 17. It wasn't a UU. It was a Catholic chaplain who was incredibly open-minded. And he said to me, "There's many paths to God." And it was the first time my whole life I heard that. And like, I was blown away. At first, for about 2 or 3 years, I thought all Catholics thought this. Obviously, I was disabused of that notion, but quickly. But
Hmm.
I grew up strict Muslim. What do I know of what the Catholics think? So I just thought, wow, this is cool. And,
Yeah.
the idea that there are many paths to God. And he happened to be a pluralist thinker. And so when I found Unitarian Universalism at 22, but I didn't know 20, I didn't join at 20, I joined much later, but it was refreshing. It was like, oh, there can be a faith community that isn't, hitting me over the head with a cast iron pot saying this is the only way to exist, and
Mm.
you will be punished if you don't think or feel this way. And it's more, I think people still underestimate how important that is, that message.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's a line I lifted directly from my colleague who's I'm having a pandemic moment, brain cramp. Um, Amy, I'll come up with it like tomorrow sometime, I'm sure. But one of the things that she says on the regular is, "You are whole, you are holy, and you are loved."
Mm,
And I have incorporated those words into our welcoming words in the congregation that I serve, where I have adjusted them a little bit. And I say, "Here you are whole in your brokenness. Here you are
mm,
holy in your shame. And here you are loved as you are always."
mm.
And I've had like every now and then as a minister, you stand up every Sunday and you say a thing and you wonder if it lands anywhere, or if it just sort of, especially when we were online, like, does it, it goes out into the ether and what does it have an effect? And then every now and then I'll find somebody who will come up to me and say, "When I first came here, I didn't understand any of it, but boy, those opening words really hit." And so it's funny. Every time I get to the point where I'm like, "Geez, that's getting stale. Do we want to do it? Do we want to?" And then somebody will say, "Oh, I knew this was a place for me when I heard those words."
Oh yeah.
So,
One of the things I'm realizing as I'm kind of moving through an understanding of different points in my life, I don't say people are broken anymore. I say wounded. I'm like, you know what I mean? Because I think I read somewhere somebody said people aren't broken, they're wounded. And that was powerful to me because when the times where I thought I was broken, I'm like, no, it was wounds. It was wounds that caused me pain. And I sometimes, even if they're scarred over, every now and then you get kind of
mm,
memory. So
yeah,
it's not to say right or wrong, but it's like it was a powerful shift for me to think of
mm,
that we are wholly in our woundedness. We are wounded, and how do we heal the wounds of
mm,
whatever it is that happened in our past?
mm.
Which I found to be just a shift in, because I apply it to myself. It's like, what do I
Of
say about
course, yeah,
myself and what do we say about others? But
right,
anyway, that
right,
was just something that shifted my thinking,
yeah,
was thinking that we are wounded.
yeah.
Um,
And I used to say it just, "You are whole, you are holy, you are loved." And I had a congregant come up to me and say, "Not all of us feel whole."
mm,
Um, you know, he said, "On a lot of days, I feel still kind of broken,
mm,
um, like some assembly required." Um, and so that's when I changed that. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
um,
that's powerful.
and yeah, I don't know that language. Um, I don't know. Language is so powerful, and It is a flexible soup of stuff. It really is.
It is a flexible soup of stuff. That's well said. And because people are in different places, things land differently. And,
Exactly. Yeah.
and mixing it up is good too, because you're sending the same message. It's the same idea that you are whole and holy, and you will be held and loved wherever and in whatever state you are in right now.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that was,
it's that invitation.
That was the power of Fred Rogers, right?
Yeah.
You're special just the way you are.
Fred Rogers.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. He was something special, that guy.
Exactly. So, I don't know if anyone is asking questions, because if not, we can just
we can babble, or we can go put our feet up and eat bonbons.
I mean, or catch up on the work that I'm so behind on because pandemic. But yes, that too. Maybe.
So, before we go anywhere, I'd like to say something about that, and that is, I see so many colleagues, so many religious professionals, whether they're religious educators or whether they're administrators or whether they're ministers or whatever, who have been shifting their language to things to say things like, I'm so glad I've got a couple of days off, then I can catch up. That's not okay.
Because it's not days off.
That's not okay. No, those are work days. You just, you're just not punching a clock. So, it feels like there's some portion of our population as a whole who are really eager to get back to doing everything like normal used to be. And I'm trying to think of a good analogy. All I can think is like when the astronauts come back from space.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
Right? Like they've been away for a year on this cool floating thing, but they have no muscles anymore.
Oof, that is powerful. Yeah. And they need to relearn. It takes a few weeks.
Oh my God, yes. Oh
my
God, yes. The first time we were like, oh, we have to actually light a chalice in person. Where do we keep the candles? Where do we keep the matches? What do we do? How do we do this? It was confusing. And then we're like, oh, right. We do joys and sorrows. We need pebbles. Where do we keep the pebbles?
I mean, and for me, as I started gathering with more than one other person, I'm an extrovert with a capital E. I was getting tired. I'm like, I guess there's an introvert in me that has been awakened in this pandemic. I'm forgetting how to people, which is for me, like people, I ran the womb peopling. And so now I'm kind of like, people are exhausting me in a way that didn't happen before.
Oh my God. Yes.
Right? I don't know. Like and it could be that I'm getting older. I mean, I'm going to be 51 in next week. And so I'm like, maybe, but I don't know. I'm like, is this the pandemic? Because I spent 3 months with me and my dog and like hardly seeing anyone else. So
right.
Going up in a room full of 2 or 3 people for more than a day. I'm like, I am very tired now. I'm going to go to sleep.
Right. Yeah. I really think the space station thing is like so real. We've been 18 months having to learn all kinds of new stuff, which was exhausting in itself. Right. You remember your first year of college, and you'd come home exhausted, like wiped out. And for me, coming from a working class background, it was like, why am I so tired? I haven't done anything. Right? I haven't built anything. I haven't made any widgets. I haven't worked on an assembly line. I haven't shoveled any snow. Why am I so tired? Well, it's because our brains were having to do all that work, and that is physical work, and it makes us tired.
Yeah.
And yet, so here we are, having spent a year and a half in space, exhausting our brains doing all of this incredible learning about how do we do this online and how do we, just all of that. And now we're back in person and we have to figure out how to walk again.
And fear, like we've been doing this 18 months, and when did the vaccines come out? And now there's a whole segment of the population still saying things like those who got the vaccine are going to die in 2 or 3 years. Like what is happening? Like there's layers upon layers of just it's trying to navigate kind of almost the absurd of what a segment of our population is saying, and then the reality of I'm getting a booster today. I'm thrilled to get the vaccine, and so there's layers of fear. There's uncertainty. There's still people who want, and then there's the Kyle Rittenhouse trials happening right now. Okay, I'm gonna say, can I say something controversial?
Please. No, it's so out of character for you. Oh, come on.
So I realized on social media there was I go down the rabbit hole of TikTok more than is that I'm embarrassed to say how long I spend on TikTok, but I follow some really amazing creators. So one of the posts was Kyle Rittenhouse was crying, and yes, I understand the reaction of like crocodile tears. This is bullshit. And as a faith leader, as a mother of a boy who was just barely out of being a teenager,
yeah,
I was thinking to myself, this boy was fed a diet in his family, in media, of hate. I'm not excusing it at all.
No.
It was more, I think, what I kind of like for a second, I was like, look, he needs to be held accountable. The family his mother needs to be held accountable. Drove him. Where are we going, right? She needs to,
right. Yeah, absolutely.
Too. And I'm like, maybe there's a sliver of this teenager who woke up and realized what he did, maybe out of the adrenaline of thinking he was some freaking superhero and cosplaying death. Like maybe it was like the faith leader in me who wants to affirm the humanity in others, no matter how heinous they behave. Is this like, could it be completely bullshit? Of course. That's, it's between him and his God. But the part of me that, again, that's a faith leader that had a son who made some pretty interesting choices in life and have seen teenagers make choices. It's like, and, I don't know, like, I didn't have this. I mean, I was kind of like saying to myself, like, am I like a sympathizer of horrible people? And that has not been something that I've embodied. And so I kind of realized
I don't think you risk you're at any risk for being accused of such a thing. Just from here.
So I was kind of thinking, like, is there, because the part of me that wants him to truly hold himself accountable for what happened, is he realizing that what he did was heinous, that what he did was taken life because he didn't stop and think about the messages he was, I don't know. Like, do you see am I making sense? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. It occurs to me that, like, I saw clips of it. I couldn't watch too much; just my stomach couldn't handle it.
Oh no, I only saw that it happened. I have no idea what he was. I just saw him crying.
But it's this Kyle Rittenhouse is white, male, privileged, yada 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 yada. And his frontal lobe is not fully connected yet. I mean, biologically, he's still a child. And psychologists teach us that when you're 16 years old, you're still doing that magical thinking, right? I won't get caught. I won't get arrested. I won't get pregnant. I won't get in trouble. All that stuff. I won't get addicted, right? And suddenly he is at the center of something much bigger than him. He has been praised by a bunch of people with really toxic ambitions.
Horrific, yeah.
And that's the only place he's getting affirmation.
And belonging for as heinous and horrible, that's what, it's a belonging.
Right. Yeah. And my universalist theology causes me to believe that nobody is born evil. And there's a part of me that says there's got to be something in that kid that knows I'm getting used by this, and I'm about to pay for all of the shit that my friends, who want to pose for pictures of me.
And his mother, who freaking drove him there.
Oh,
What
yeah. No. She's old enough to know better. Like, I will drive you. You know what? I will drive you there to do something stupid, but I will not let you bring an automatic
to
weapon.
Murder people. I mean, oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You know? Right. Like, okay, go protest, go do that. But, I'm just thinking, like, you hit anybody, you bail yourself out of jail, kid. Like, never mind, shoot somebody. Good Lord.
I mean, I found myself like surprised at my reaction, because I absolutely, I am no center. I am not halfway to a Nazi. I have clarity on my beliefs, and I found myself, the word isn't compassion, but rather like here's what it was. It was a sliver of hope that this boy understands that he fucking murdered people. But those tears, yes, could they be crocodile tears and I'm being naive? Absolutely, 1,000%. And the part of me that maybe it was the mother in me, like maybe it was the faith leader, the religious educators worked with so many youth who've now I've been in this long enough that I saw a youth, not even just mine, but just other folks, youth who made not great choices, and now 10 years later are like, yeah, OMG, how I was then. Because there is the evil of white supremacy, of white nationalism that vilifies, and there is a steady diet of hate. And I was just surprised in my reaction, and I kind of had to unpack it. Like, wait a minute, this is not. I was surprised, and I was kind of trying to unpack, like, what am I? And like I said, I'm not an apologist, but rather, I want to see his mother get the same jail time as him. Frankly, I think, prison abolitionist. But sometimes I'm like, well, this is what we have. So whatever accountability he gets, she needs to get the same exact, and maybe more. Frankly,
right? Yeah, because she had more culpability.
Yeah. Tanner?
Hey, Janine.
Yeah, so this is Arizona State University. Oh my God. It's beyond disgusting and gross. And is there a social media campaign against them? Because they're all, I believe, I don't know if they're all online, but I know that is so disgusting. I can't now. Thank you for bringing that, Janine. How gross. How disgusting.
I struggle with the entire state of Arizona, which I know is unfair. But damn it, those folks elected Jan Brewer twice. Right?
Well, and Janine,
what the hell?
Here's the thing because this is another thing about complexity. And Janine, thank you for bringing that up. So I've learned during, especially since 2016, is because I'm guilty of this. I'm going to speak for myself. I'm guilty of writing off entire red states, like Arizona, Florida, Alabama.
Texas.
But then I look at the folks who I not only am close to, but Unitarian Universalists who are in those places saying,
I know,
here's the support we need and the help we need. So I'm saying like I'm with but I realized doing that simply doesn't then make room for where can we organize and help shift things. For me, like this is a perfect example. So what are the ways we can show up to say to ASU, this is reprehensible and gross what you're doing, and racist. Right. I mean, let's start with racist.
Start with racist.
Gross. And how do we, again, it's holding the complexity, and not, for me, I've learned, like, I am not going to throw my hands up anymore at, I'm not going to generalize in such a way in terms of, I'm now going to speak specifically about red states. It's like, well,
Right.
people I love who are UUs, who are organizers, who are fighting for their lives and other people's lives live in these states. And so what are the ways we can show up for folks who are literally on the front line?
Right. Right. And I recognize that I do not have whatever it is that it takes to do that work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I admire those folks. I worry about those folks. I pray for those folks, whatever that might look like from my weird little atheist, pagan, ex-Catholic brain. And I am so grateful for them. And oh dear, it's hard. It's hard, you know.
We also don't have nearly enough UU congregations in the South. We do not have nearly enough. It almost, and I have a colleague who pointed this out about, if you follow white flight, that's where UU congregations are. Like, for as liberal or as forward thinking as we think we are,
what?
Look at where UU
totally right. You're totally right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I have a bit of a confession to make, and this is really uncomfortable. And that is, had I grown up 30 or 40 years later than I did, in the community that I was in the area that I was in the culture that I was in, you know, there but for the grace of God go I. I was a real scared, uneducated, young person, personally terribly, terribly insecure. Taught to be afraid of certain things and groups and entities by my family, most notably my father. And I totally bought into that sort of redneck culture. You know, I mean, that's where I grew up. Where I went to high school in November, this was the early 80s, in November, which was deer hunting season in Maine, the boys would come in, and the rule was they weren't allowed to leave their rifles in their trucks. They had to bring them in to the principal's office, and they would stack them against the wall. Right?
You're talking about school. You're talking about rifles coming into school. Okay, just clarifying. That was not my experience in New Jersey.
Yeah. Right. I was in rural Maine, you know, and the principal was just so glad that the boys even showed up in November, right? Because nobody shows up until they got their deer. And that was where I grew up, and that was the culture I understood. And that is not far removed from this Rittenhouse kid now. You know, and I didn't know what I know now, and back then I wasn't interested in knowing, because to know that stuff, well, it took 40, 50 years, whatever, to undo all of that learning, which meant that almost brick by brick, I had to disassemble everything that I used as an identity to become who I am now, which is still flawed, which is still not as good as I'd like to be, which still every now and then I'll find another thing and be like, oh, should have got rid of that a while ago. But for so many of these folks, and I'm not, you know me, I'm not one to offer hugs and squishies to fascists, but I understand what it is like to realize that everything about myself was a lie.
Right there, nail on head of what needs to happen right now to shift is white people need to understand the lies they've been told.
Right.
That is right there, the nail on the head. Like
Right.
there's not enough of that happening, of examining what whiteness is and how destructive it truly, truly has been and is and continues to be.
Now that turning point came for me when I was in a particular part of my recovery where it was, to move forward, I needed to do a fearless and searching moral inventory. For those who are familiar with that language will understand what that means. And that means I really had to take a look at myself and what I've done and what I believed and what I thought and all of that. And in that process, I understood. I remember I talked with a mentor at the time who said I was a wreck. I call it, oh, everything's terrible. Oh my God. And he says, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I was like, fuck you, Bill. Just fuck you. I don't want to hear this. He's like, the only thing you have to do is be willing to change everything about yourself.
That's it. Duh.
Right? And I was in enough pain at that time that I was willing to say yes. And then I started having to examine those bricks one at a time, taking them down and putting something healthier in that place. And for those who are new in recovery, I don't recommend waiting 20 years to get to that point. Just saying, those were not 20 happy years, but that was the beginning of the learning that I still continue, and I really had to take apart piece by piece by piece, and look at the anger and the pride that I had that were so much a part of my identity, and to put that down and let it go.
And in the United States right now, there's a whole segment of the population and there's politicians, there's networks that are feeding the fear and keeping white people from doing that examination. And because of power, I mean, we know money, capitalism, all of that. And it is going to destroy us all. That's the thing. It's like, to what end for any of this? It's like, how do we, and I've been thinking, I say this to myself a lot as a faith leader, especially, how do we inspire folks? Because Unitarian Universalists are not exempt. Like we listen, we're still human. We're not special snowflakes. Like,
we might be, but that's different.
But I mean, we are part of the human experience. We're trying to figure this out. I'm trying to figure this out. And how do we inspire folks to get beyond their, I'm going to say, I will say this, white folks, and especially, so I'm an immigrant. So immigrants who come here, who buy into the story of white supremacy and buy into, you just have to work hard, because for some immigrants that works, many, however, it's not a complete picture. And it's also leaving behind Black and Indigenous people who built this country, the descendants of, and who still continue to be part of violent extractive capitalism. So how, understanding, the more and more diversity, equity, inclusion work I do, and the more I delve into just kind of meeting people from all over the country, is whiteness. White people need to understand themselves and how whiteness is operating. There was somebody on TikTok, a Black creator, who said, she was talking to a Black woman. She said, white people, don't come to our marches. Just march amongst yourselves. Like, you don't need to let us know how woke you are. We know what the problem is. You talk amongst yourselves, fix this amongst yourselves, because this isn't, and actually the point she made, which I hadn't heard before, is she said, when white people show up to our marches, to Black Lives Matter marches and to marches of Black and Indigenous people, you diminish your privilege. And I hadn't heard that before. And I was like, huh. And she said, and then you're simply seen as less than. So I'm not necessarily agreeing. It's kind of like, huh, I just heard it in the last couple of days. And I'm like, I am chewing on that.
That's what we were supposed to do.
Well, here's the thing about that. What does it accomplish except, I mean, does it then start to dismantle systems? Like, in other words, what her point is, go to other white people and work to dismantle those systems rather than diminishing your privilege and walking with us and not dismantling. Those systems don't get dismantled if you simply join the marches and then feel better about yourselves. Like, you know, it was definitely, and I always feel like I've heard the most radical thing, and then I never, you know, it's like I hear more, it's not radical, but it's kind of, I'm like, oh, I think I understand what that point is. And so it's interesting. I also want to reiterate for folks, and we ended up talking, it's already almost 15 minutes to go. Meg Riley will be back in December. You know, we've had a change of plans. Right. And Reverend Dave Petit, who was very important to the UUA, his memorial is today. So Meg is attending that. She very generously offered to still be here, but she was his colleague for a very long time. So anyway, so we can wrap this up. Otherwise, we can go for another hour and a half. So, are there any more comments or anything that you're noticing from folks? Did Tanner hear me?
I don't know. He probably figured the two of us could talk for another long while and went to get lunch.
Probably. Okay. All right. Anything that stands out you want to say or no? Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Darby and Janine, everyone who's joining us this morning. So Dawn, any final thoughts, and then we'll close out. We ended up having a show, just the two of us. How cool is that?
Right.
High five.
I know. And neither of us so far have been arrested. So the day is young. The day is young. No, I want to offer, without going into a lot of detail, I just want to offer that, ask for folks to be kind to the ministers and serving in congregations around the country right now. There's a lot going on. Everyone is, I think the whole country is doing that, like coming out of a year and a half on the space shuttle, and we're learning how to move our muscles again in ways that serve us, and ministers have to do that, as well as religious educators have to do that, and administrators have to do that, and suddenly we have to go to the post office, and like we don't like so as our members and the general public learns how to do this re-entry thing, I want you to just say a nice prayer or thought or something towards your religious professionals who are dealing with our own re-entry stuff and having to hold space for everyone else to do that uncomfortable stuff.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, be tender with each other. Be tender with the leaders who have been holding a lot. And I know you all have been holding a lot. So blessings to everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dawn. This was fun. Tanner, thank you. This was fun. Tanner, thank you, as always, for your work. And we will see you all next week with an amazing show.
Yes.
And I actually forgot who's going to be on next week. So that's okay. It'll be a beautiful surprise. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The VUU.